Hello everyone and welcome to a game called Requiescence. It's a game developed by Argent Games, who were just so nice enough to give me a key to this game. You can purchase it on their website or it's on Steam Greenlight for $10 USD. Convert that into your own local currencies. This is a game where you play as Kymil, an adventurer, as you try to find the truth behind your uncle's death, and then end up getting entwined in a battle that could decide the fate of the world. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Well, let's get right into it, shall we? Start the game. Just as a warning, for those of you who don't know, this is a BL game, which stands for Boys Love Game, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a game where you play as a male protagonist and you woo other male protagonists. So if this kind of content offends you or you don't dislike the content, please click off. Alright, that's my disclaimer. There was only silence in the black, empty room. Oh nice, it's got controller support. The darkness was so thick that it covered the chamber like a blanket, crushing the very air itself. But this darkness was not empty. In silence, a voice broke through. A lonely voice that was hollow and soft. It spoke to no visible being. Will you help me? Will you save everything? Or will your selfishness destroy it all? The voice brought those words to the empty air. Then, from the center of the room, a soft blue light began to glow. The blue light took the shape of a glowing orb. Within that orb, the image of a city began to form, as if reflected from the eyes of an eagle flying overhead. The realm reflected in the depths of the orb was once a powerful, peaceful kingdom spread throughout the continent. Now, all that remained was a broken and war-torn mass of city-states. When the last king was assassinated over 300 years ago, the world was suddenly plunged into chaos. With no living heir, the crown was fought over by the king's vassals, each insisting that they had some claim to the throne. Nor was it just the crown they struggled over, no. Former allies sought to murder one another, whether it was over position of great power or the smallest scraps of land. No one knew why the world had fallen so quickly into chaos and decay. Darkness sprouted in even the sanest men's hearts, turning them against their people in the blink of an eye. Trust, honor, and loyalty, all were relics of the past. Ruthlessness was the only way one could survive. But there was always someone else more cold-hearted, more clever, and more ambitious. It was as though a sickness crawled like a serpent about the realm, squeezing tighter and tighter with each passing year. But there was no cure for it, only empty hope that one day the world would be restored. The continent was called Rephidim, named after the kingdom that now lay in ruins. It had once been grassy and fertile, but now all but small parts of land were ravaged and barren. To the north stood snowy mountains, and to the southwest there lay a broad strip of desert, populated mostly with mages and merchants. The capital in the east was a beacon of hope in the ravaged world, but even there, corruption's roots had taken an unshakable hold. And in the far west, the dead, dry plains kept away any travelers seeking other realms. It was once said they were lush fields, full of soft grass and rich flowers. But after the king's death, they had gradually decayed into lifelessness. That decay seemed to spread further every year. One day, perhaps, they would swallow even the cities themselves. It was this harsh world that the orb reflected. A world with no kingdoms left, only kings. Alone I will fail, but together we can save everything. Within the blue orb, the image of the world faded away, replaced with the shape of a single small shadow. A hand reached out to touch the orb, slender fingers tracing longingly across the dark figure. Come to me. I need you. The light flickered. For a few moments longer, it tried to keep shining, its blue rays casting a cold, candlelight glow around the empty room. But soon, it was extinguished. The room was dark again, as if the light had never existed. We will save them all. I will be waiting. Tall gray spires reaching towards the sky. I can see them on the horizon, just over the edge of the hill. They're like long, slender needles stabbing up into the bleak sunset. For a moment, I'm so absorbed in the sight that I can hardly hear my horse's hooves scuffling against the dead, dry plain. These spires, they inspire me. They're the crown of a huge, towering structure, a cathedral. My destination, my sole reason for riding through this hellish wasteland. I've been searching for this place since my uncle died several years ago, but there was never any guarantee it was real. Until now. But even as I gaze at the huge mountain of a black tower in the distance, it feels like I'm lost in a dream.
Good work, Ayla. We've come a long way.
I reached down a hand to pat my horse's shaggy white mane. How many leagues have we traveled to get here? I lost count. I stopped bothering to keep track of the days. Now I just count how long it's been since the last exciting thing happened. Let's see. Well, I managed to find drinkable water this morning. That's always a plus. And the last week I narrowly escaped a pack of wolves. As for the last time I saw another human, well, that's had to have been a month, at least, maybe more. As I ride closer, I can tell my horse is uneasy. She's been jittery ever since we first entered the Dead Plains. At night, things get even worse. I'm afraid she's going to try and run away from me. So far, she's stayed by my side, although obviously with some reluctance. I can't blame her. The sight of the cathedral towering in the distance makes me feel nervous, too. It's more of a mountain than a structure. To call it massive doesn't do it justice. Makes me feel small, insignificant. Like a speck of dust in a giant shadow. Not a very welcoming sight, I'll admit. The closer we ride, the more daunting it becomes. It feels like ages before we finally get close to the entrance. I still have the sensation I'm in a dream, but no, this is real. It has to be real. I guide Ayla to a halt, and an uncomfortable sense of dread and excitement churns in my stomach while I dismount. I guess this is it, girl. After stretching my legs, I reach out to untie my pack from the saddle. The rest of my food, water, and a few personal belongings are in there, along with a few gold coins. I fasten the pack straps to my shoulders with a faint grunt. I turn to look at the cathedral doors properly. Two looming slabs of black stone tower imposingly over me. Even the ornate silver rings used to pull them open are twice the size of my hand. I take hold of Ayla's reins and lead her up to the doors, walking on the murky ground as I gaze upward. Despite my excitement, a strong sense of foreboding threatens to overwhelm me entirely. Just a hole of muddy water. But in the dead silence, the sound was so sudden that my heart skipped a beat. Maybe two. I should be more on my toes. Only the gods know what monsters lurk within this place. Sighing to myself, I paused to look down at my reflection in the murky puddle I stepped in. This long journey has made me look gaunt and older than I actually am. I think I turned 19 a few weeks ago, but I'm not really sure these days. Feels like decades have passed since I first set out, even though I think it's only been about a year. Time starts to distort quickly when day and night look the same. Exhaling a deep breath, I reach out toward one of the giant door's handles. My fingers slide around the cold metal ring. The solid sensation sends shivers down my spine. It's not a dream. I've come so far, waited so long. Half of the time I was writing, I found myself doubting that this place was even real. But every time the thought of giving up entered my mind, I forced it away. I'm here because I have to pursue something my Uncle Gideon couldn't. And I can't let him down. Gritting my teeth, I summon all of the strength I have and pull back the handle as hard as I can. It's so bright. I'm finally here. That was a very epic song, was it not? A huge, fiery glow fills the end of the broad corridor. It feels like some sort of powerful heat is emanating from inside. A sudden rush of hot air brushes against my face and blows my hair back. And then behind me, an abrupt, frenzied whining. I turn to see my horse rearing up in terror.
Layla, no!
Okay, I skipped that. I did not hit the button. It takes off galloping in the direction we came from, abandoning me without a second thought. At least I unstrap my bag first. Although I try to keep myself calm, my stomach starts to bubble with nervousness again. I do my best to put the thought of starvation and abandonment out of my mind. Surely there has to be something here. Why else would Gideon write about this place? But if not, no, there's not much I can do about it now. Just to make sure it's still here, still there, I lower a hand to feel for the pommel of the sword hanging to my belt. My fingers brush against it, and the cool touch of the metal is comforting somehow. Well, no point wasting any more time. I step inside the corridor, clutching my pack tightly. Hesitantly, I start to make my way further into the hall. It's remarkably warm inside. The heat is very different from the cool evening air, and it's a little uncomfortable. It also smells oddly sulfurific. Ugh. I take an idle glance up at the ceiling as I walk forward. The beautiful arches are reminiscent of the ancient grand temples that used to be revered as places of worship. But the fiery glow makes it hard to see both above and far ahead of me. When I glance back over my shoulder after walking for a minute, I can't even see the exit anymore. I feel like the cathedral's swallowing me. Why am I being so melodramatic? It's a creeping, lonely place, sure, but at least I finally found it. So far, it seems a lot like how my uncle described it in his notebook. A huge, dark place with an aura of foreboding hanging around it like a cloud. He told me he never set foot here himself and only knew about it from his research. But his description seems very accurate. Brushing my bangs back from my forehead with a hand, I head further towards the opaque glow, listening to my footsteps softly echo back to me. After walking for a little while, I curiously reach out to brush my fingertips against the wall. The stone feels warm. The soft grooves curve gentle under my hand. I think I can make out what looks like runes? There's some sort of strange symbols, and I can't place their origin. But they seem familiar somehow. I frown, giving a shake of my head as I continue down the hall. I wonder where I could have seen them before. Come to think of it, they look similar to the runes sketched in my Uncle Gideon's notebook. If only he were here now to see all this with me. I feel a little pang in my chest as I picture his face, the gaunt way he looked at like the last time I saw him. I wonder if he's watching me from whatever afterlife there might be. My thoughts drift idly as I keep heading towards the distant glow. It feels like I've been walking for a solid hour. The walls, the ground, the light, everything looks the same as when I first entered. I'm starting to wonder, am I even moving forward? Just as I begin to doubt my sanity, suddenly, something flickers in the distance. I blink a few times. Still there, shimmering and rippling in the fiery light. Is this the end of the corridor? My chest tightens with hope. I break into a sprint. The sound of my footsteps bounces off the walls, louder and louder as I put more weight in each stride. The glimmer in the distance is getting brighter. Brighter and brighter, until my foot hits a ledge, and I hurtle forward, but manage to catch my balance. After a moment, I realize the reddish golden glow of the fog is gone. I glance over my shoulder to find it's still obstructing the corridor I came from, but I can at least see the room around me now. A huge chamber, more magnificent than anything I could have imagined. I see the source of the glimmering light now. Bright candles flickering from a large chandelier on the towering ceiling. Huge pillars all around me form a hall, guiding me forward. Up ahead, dim moonlight filters in through the faded dark windows, casting an eerie shadow over everything. This is not what I was expecting. Then again, I'm not entirely sure what I was expecting. Feels even warmer in here than in the corridor, and my hair is starting to mat against my forehead with sweat. The candles up above me crackle softly in the distance. In the silence and the distance, giving the empty chamber a faintly warm light. The sound makes me oddly happy. Feels like the only thing I've heard for hours was my own footsteps. At the end of the hall, I spot a small rectangular shape that looks like an altar of some sort. It stands on a lightly raised platform like a dais and sticks out against the featureless wall. I approach the dark marble stairs leading up the altar, gazing all around me while I walk. Everything about this place is so looming, threatening. Maybe long ago it was a beautiful place of worship, but now it feels more like a dungeon that's waiting to consume me. The pillars cast towering shadows down over me as I pass by them. On their surfaces, oddly ornate decorations are etched into the stone. With my curiosity getting the better of me, I stop by one pillar to study the images. They seem to mostly be of kneeling and bowing figures. One decoration in particular catches my eye. A man with a crown, bending down before a woman in ragged clothing. There are others similar to it etched nearby, but with different figures. They're beautifully drawn, but so faded that they give off an eerie, nostalgic feeling. I wonder who made them. I finally reach the dais and ascend the steps towards the altar. When I examine it, I'm a little surprised at how mundane it looked. A short, lonely slab of gray marble with minor, faded decoration on its front and sides. I lean in to get a better look at its surface, and I see runes etched into the marble. I can actually read these runes, unlike the altar itself, which seems very old. The markings look surprisingly recent. I trace a finger along the grooves, frowning as I try to figure out what the symbols mean.
One drop to light the fire.
I use my thumb to scrape away the light dust concealing the next of the set of runes.
2 drops ignite the core.
Core? Core of what?
3 drops to burn it higher.
I pause, squinting to decipher the last of the runes. The flickering light of the candles is atmospheric, certainly, but it definitely doesn't make reading any easier.
A 4th drop to part the door.
Door. I glance around the chamber skeptically. No door in sight. The only places that aren't obscured by pillars are smooth stone walls. I didn't come all this way just to be stuck at a dead end, no siree. I might as well see if I can figure out the meaning of these arcane runes. I'd like to think that drops only mean water, but I have the foreboding feeling that the altar wants blood. The magic that I can sense from it is oddly twisted. Like something that was once pure, but now is a hollow, disfigured version of itself. Darker magic often uses blood for rituals, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's needed for this one. After a moment's hesitation, I reach down to grasp my sword and draw it out. A familiar sound of the metal scraping against the scabbard echoes in the large chamber. It's an ornate blade, its hilt decorated with twin carvings of lions' heads. I'll admit that the sword is more ornamental than functional, but I've kept the blade sharp enough to cut skin. I bring the edge to a thin gash on my forearm. I'd gotten the wound from twisting and turning on the rocky ground in my sleep. I just closed up a few days ago, but a soft brush of the blade against my flesh makes the red line easily slit open. I grit my teeth from the spark of pain that wells around the spot. Slowly, blood begins to trickle out from the cut, and I raise my arm over the altar. Drip. Single drop splashes onto the altar. Nothing happens. I raise an eyebrow, sheathing my sword and placing my hand atop the wound to keep further blood from spilling out. Seconds pass and nothing happens. I knew I was a fool to think this would work. But then, the blood sinks into the marble of the altar. It makes a loud hissing noise, and I jump back in surprise. The marble looks dry, as if my blood never spilled on it at all. This is too weird. I draw my sword back out again quickly, turning to hastily glance around the room. But I don't see anything or anyone. Huh? Then, in the corner of my eye, a flash of red by the edge of the chamber. I shoot a glance to my right to see a torch now lit on the wall. It blazes with a vibrant red flame. Next to it, though, is only the featureless stone of the wall. The torch looks so isolated that I can't help but wonder its purpose. But it definitely hadn't been lit before. Maybe this really does have a chance of working, even though it gives me a horrible feeling. With some reluctance, I take my hand off the wound where the cut is still oozing small crimson drops. I tilt my arm a little bit, letting a trickle of blood trail down my wrist. Another fresh drop falls onto the altar, and then a moment later, hiss! The loud sound makes even more than a little uneasy. But the wait is shorter this time. Before long, I hear the sound of flames growing louder. What the? I swear I just heard something like a far-off explosion. It seemed really distant, but still. I quickly glance over to the newly ignited torch. Just beside it, I can see a glowing red ring on the stone. It has the same ethereal crimson gleam as the torch beside it. 2 drops ignite the core. I turn back to the altar. The 3rd drop. There's so much anticipation flowing through me that I can't even feel the wound stinging anymore. But I can see that it's still bleeding. I gingerly let another droplet fall from my forearm onto the marble. This time I quickly turn around to face where the torch and circular groove are on the wall. Before my very eyes, the glow of the circular rune starts to bleed outwards. Another light begins glowing, revealing a rectangular shape in the stone, about the size of a door. Reminds me of liquid metal being poured into a mold, glowing and angry, fiery red and deep in grooves. Now the last drop. Sucking in a breath, I hold my sword to my forearm, lightly pressing the blade to my skin to coax another drop of blood out of the clotting wound. I raise my arm over the altar one last time, swallowing the uneasy feeling tightening my throat. The wound on my arm looks worse than when I begun. I guess I was a little clumsy when I first cut it back open. I allow one last drop to ooze from my skin down onto the hungry marble. Drip. There was no hissing sound this time. And then I hear a sudden deep cracking noise. I almost don't want to look at the door, but I force my gaze back towards it. The circular rune on the door. It is now split in half by a slender black line, a line that runs a jagged course from the top to the bottom of the frame. It splits the stone like a lightning bolt. The markings on the altar bleed a red glow, shimmering unnervingly. A fourth drop to part the door. I cover my arm back up with my sleeve, not paying much mind to the faint stinging of the cut. Sheathing my sword slowly, I can't help but wonder if I've done something horrible by using this dark magic. But at least I have a way to move forward, and right now, that's all that matters. Or so I repeat in my head grimly. Just as I'm about to turn away, I notice a set of faded, much older looking runes on the side of the altar. I hadn't seen them there before. Might as well read them, see if there's anything important. Let's see. Carry the weight of your pride, kneel down before the ascent, bear the lash you cannot hide, straighten what the world has bent. Pride, ascent. Does it mean anything, or is this just an old chant? Beside it, there are 7 flat lines etched into the stone, stacked on top of each other in a strange fashion. 7. I wonder if the number is significant at all. It's not really enough information to even hazard a guess. I doubt it means much of anything, but that number, 7, burns into my brain for some reason I don't really understand. 7. Why not 8? Sighing to myself, I shrug and turn to descend the steps of the dais. Just as my foot hits the last step. Oh my god, I'm already dead. Didn't even give me time to read it. I reflexively jump back from the bright flash of red light. What forms before me leaves me stunned for a long moment. A tall figure, clad in white robes. His red eyes look like smoldering embers burning directly into me as he stares my way. In his hands is a long wooden staff, one that looks remarkably ancient and weathered. Is this a spirit? He takes a step closer.
Stay where you are!
I quickly pull out my sword, pointing it at the figure's head. But he doesn't seem to care. Instead, he just draws closer still, taking slow steps. Until he only stands a foot away. From this close distance, I can see that the figure's pale skin is marked by a splattering of odd, translucent patches, glimmering unnervingly. Those red eyes stare unblinkingly down at me, as if trying to read the contents of my soul.
What do you want from me?
My voice nervously spills out as I clench my fingers around my sword, ever tighter. Something about his gaze makes me feel like my energy is being drained out of me. I brandish my blade threateningly at him, forcing myself to meet his crimson eyes. But at the next moment, I hear a low, husky sound. Laugh? If you knew me, you wouldn't laugh at anything I say. I watch stunned as the white-robed figure suddenly throws his head back with a hoarse fit of laughter.
Oh my.
His voice is deep and thick, like an old and neglected instrument, full of dust. I have no clue what he finds to be so amusing, but I'm relieved that he isn't attacking me. Eventually, he regains his composure, and he affixes me with a sudden, rigid smirk. His ghostly white teeth are sharp and fang-like, making him seem even more unnerving.
The look on your face. My, I'm going to miss doing this.
It baffles me, but I can't sense any hostility from him. Instead, he just leers at me with a slight, pleased narrow of his red eyes. I don't sheath my sword, but I lower it slightly, mustering my best glare to throw at him.
Ooh, what are you?
In response, he tilts his head tauntingly to one side, lips still curled in that obscenely confident expression.
What am I? A very good question, indeed.
The figure in white robes gazes at me with an intensely curious stare so piercing that it makes my blood run cold.
I don't often show myself to visitors, but I thought I smelled something unusual. And here you are.
Answer me! Who are you, and what is this place?
Rather than replying, the creature just shakes his head with a chiding click of his tongue. I can't help but stare at the unsettling translucent patches on his skin and clothes. It's like something ate holes out of him and spiders spun webs in the gaps. So uncourteous. Clearly youth today aren't as educated in manners as they used to be. Despite his ghastly, ethereal appearance, his words and drawling tone are strangely laid back. But his expression finally fades to a more mild one, and his red eyes narrow faintly at me.
I believe I had a name many eons ago, but I don't remember it any longer. Once, though, I lived my days as a monk within these walls.
Once? Are you a spirit?
Perhaps something close to that. I'm not the last of my kind. You'll see. There were once many of us here. Half an army's worth.
After pausing for a moment, the monk slowly begins to circle me with slow, lingering steps. I felt a faint chill in the air around him. My shock gradually fades, replaced by a growing confusion from his words.
What do you come here seeking? Treasure? Like all the rest?
Is there treasure here? I mean, I wasn't looking for it, but if there is, I mean, I'm here. Might as well. Now, I wonder for a moment if I really should tell this odd man what my intentions are. But I don't think he intends me any harm. Besides, even if he can appear out of thin air like that, I don't think I could stop him from following me even if I tried.
I want to reach the heart of the cathedral.
Feels strange to tell my plans to someone else. Before, it was only something I repeated quietly in my head, so much that it seemed like a dream. The monk raises his eyebrows dubiously, pausing in front of me and staring down with a curious look.
You haven't been here before.
The odd nature of his words takes me aback. Why on earth would he think I've been here before? This is the first time I've set foot in this place. After a moment, his red eyes squint in suspicion, piercing into me so strongly that I have to control the urge to look away.
You truly believe this?
What? What is this creature trying to say? Is he trying to trick me, like all the others?
Of course. I'd remember coming to a freakish place like this.
A complex expression drifts over the monk's features. He takes a slow step back away from me, his eyes tilting sharply to one side. And then, his lips curl in an ecstatic grin. Clasping his hands together in delight, the monk lets out another long stream of grating laughter, shaking his head as though in disbelief.
I think I understand now. My, it seems we're in for a very interesting time together.
What do you mean? I can't understand this raucous laughter. Is he insane? If he is a spirit, maybe he's lost in his wits, wandering these halls.
The way towards the heart is further in, further down.
He points a long, pale finger towards the crack in the wall that opened just earlier.
Press onwards, and I will come before you again. If you are what I suspect you to be.
His confidence is so bewildering that I find myself at a loss for words. Slowly approaching me, the monk reaches out a hand towards my face. Before I have a chance to shrink back, his palm presses against my cheek. A frigid spark runs through me, and I reflexively swipe at his hand. But my hand passes through his flesh. It's as if he's only an illusion, but the sensation of his icy skin is very real. The cold, slippery feeling of his fingers traces down my jaw, freezing me in place. My vision suddenly grows hazy, as if a dream world is overlapping with the real one.
All of it.
His low murmur echoes in my ears, and a chill spreads down my spine. Even when his hand moves away after a moment, I can still feel the icy remnants of his touch, as if he'd painted something on my skin.
All of what?
I grimace at the monk, desperately trying to ignore the unpleasant sensation lingering on my skin, but he offers me a cryptic smile in return, the translucent patches on his flesh glimmering. He turns away then, muttering thoughtfully to himself.
It seems I have a little research to do, but I'll return to you before long, little one, so don't fret.
My hands curl into fists. What is this creature? And what does he know about me?
Wait! What do you mean? What is it that you see?
The desperation in my voice doesn't even make the monk bat an eye. Instead, he just looks up questioningly towards the ceiling, or maybe the heavens.
Astute questions, but ones that can be answered later. Old men like me have to allocate their time wisely.
He flashes me a secretive smile after saying this, tapping his staff against the floor a few times as if to punctuate his statement. The look in his eyes confidently says we'll meet again, so my protests get caught in my throat with hesitation.
Now then, don't get killed by anything on your expedition. I wouldn't want my long-deserved fun to be cut short.
With these cryptic words, the soft red mist starts to curl around the monk's body. It envelops him from head to toe, twisting about the staff that he clutches to his chest. Then his form flickers like a wavering candle, and within moments, he disappears entirely. As I stare at the spot where he stood, I'm left with a strangely empty feeling. Despite my confusion, his voice was the first one I've heard in a long time other than my own. I glance down to my sword, still clutched tightly in my fist.
I hope I'm not going crazy.
I slide my sword back into its sheath and smooth my bangs from my forehead with a soft sigh. I should have expected this when I followed in my Uncle Gideon's footsteps. He'd always tell me stories of the odd, fantastical things that happened to him when he was on his adventures. But I guess I never thought they would happen to me. This monk. Can I trust him? His presence makes me feel uneasy, but at the same time, I don't think he's an enemy. But if there are other creatures like him that can turn ethereal at will, I'll have to be on my guard. For some reason, I feel a slight, reluctant desire to see the monk again, if only to force him to answer all the questions that I have. I doubt he'll help me, but I have to try. What he said about sensing something inside of me. I wonder what he could have meant. I definitely haven't been anywhere near the cathedral before, so he probably just mistook me for someone else. But I can't shake this uneasy feeling of apprehension that's forming in my stomach. The sensation of the monk's frigid fingers still linger on my skin, reminding me of the words he said. All of it. I have no idea what he could be talking about. But I guess the only way to learn more is just to press forward. Maybe I'll come across something that'll give me a hint, so that I'm not stuck in the state of cluelessness. Taking a deep breath, I steel myself and head over towards the crack in the wall. The glow of the mystical door greets me as I walk over towards it. It's already really warm in here, but it feels like even more heat is coming from behind the door. I place a hand on one half of the circular rune atop the stone. Tentatively, I push it forward. The stone scrapes gratingly against the floor as it moves, but I'm careful not to open the gap too widely. After all, there might be some sort of horrible creature trapped inside. I cautiously peek into the opening. Only darkness. A musty scent abruptly rushes up in my nostrils. It's like I just opened the door to an old tomb. Ugh. I hastily rub my nose with my hand to alleviate the tingling sensation. As I do so, I squint into the darkness to try and see if there's anything past the door. I think I can see stairs. The spiral staircase leading downwards, but incredibly narrow. It's only about 5 feet wide. Good thing I don't have a fear of tight spaces. Well, here goes nothing. Before I head down, I throw one last glance back at the altar. For some reason, I feel like I'm being watched. It's not like there's any real hiding spots in this room, but it just seems too quiet. Bah, I think I'm just paranoid after all that monk suddenly appeared in front of me. I turn back to squeeze through the gap in the door, sucking in my breath so I can fit past. And then I take one light step onto the first stair, just to make sure it doesn't crumple beneath my feet. It seems firm. Bracing myself, I start heading downwards into the depths of wherever these stairs might take me. Dark. There's no light at all, save for the distant flickering of torches. Cobwebs get caught in my mouth as soon as I try to yawn. Ugh. I stumble down a stair or two, but quickly get my balance. For some reason, there's an odd feeling of weight on me, as if my pack has suddenly gotten much heavier.
This place is horrible.
Got that right. The heat and smell of old dusty stone are the only thing I have in this pitch blackness. It feels like I'm descending into the bowels of the earth. It's so far from the rest of humanity that no one would ever find my corpse if I died here. No funeral, no grave, no remembrance, no requiescence. No funeral. Oh, I just read that. Just darkness. I shudder at the morbid picture. Taking a deep breath, I shall shake my head to get rid of these dark thoughts. I'm not here for myself. I'm here to fulfill a task that Gideon could not. I have to remember that as I'm persevering for him, not for my own glory. And for that reason, I can't fail. I get into the rhythm of taking the stairs 2 at a time, half jogging downwards. The feeling of weight has left me, and now I'm making fast progress downwards. I've been descending for a while, but I think the staircase is starting to slope more steeply. I slow my pace so that I don't tumble head over heels and smash my head open. I step down a bit further, treading more carefully, and then the staircase abruptly ends. Before my face is a large, heavy set of doors, similar to those at the entrance of the cathedral. In fact, the handle looks so familiar that for a moment I wonder if I'd somehow looped around to the beginning. But there's something different about these doors. What is it that looks so strange about them? They seem very old, as if they were standing here since the dawn of time, and like with so many old structures, parts of the stone have fallen away and crumbled, leaving chips and gaps in the door. But oddly enough, the holes are filled with some sort of gleaming opaque film. Like many spider webs twisted into a single shimmering mass. Wait a second. I've seen these translucent patches before. The monk. He had the same odd shimmering holes in his skin, filled with this strange white film. It's uncanny how similar they look. But how could they possibly be related? The monk and this door? Feeling compelled by my curiosity, I tentatively reach out a hand to one of the white spots. An abrupt numbness shoots through me, a pulsing, tingling sensation that spreads from my fingertips through my body. It feels like someone just threw a handful of needles into my spine. But as soon as I yank back my hand, the overpowering sensation fades. What the hell? I roughly shake myself off to try and get rid of the horrible feeling. What was that? I've never felt anything like it before. I can strongly detect magic from this door, but it's not normal magic. It leaves lasting tingles down my spine, and I can feel all the hair in my body standing on end. There's something very wrong with this door. I really, really don't want to go through it, but I don't think there's another way forward. Feeling cornered, I take a cautious step back and hear a soft crunching sound at my feet. A note. Fancy silver twine is wrapped around it, tied in a perfect knot. Seems so out of place that it immediately sparks my suspicion. I cautiously reach down to grab the note, but it seems to be a perfectly ordinary piece of parchment. I untie the twine from the note and smooth it out. It's written in a very dignified hand with elegant swirls everywhere. I wonder who could have left such a note in such a strange place. Let's see what it says. Whatever poor saw is reading this, get out. I mean it. There's nothing but death beyond this door. Death and suffering and more death, things like that. Turn back while you can. I'll probably die while writing this note. If I hadn't brought ink with me, I'd use my own blood to write it. Good thing I do have ink, though. Less messy. Really, though, turn back. Don't suffer the same fate I have. There's a little scribble at the bottom where it looks like someone's wrote their signature and then hastily covered it over. I just have to reread the note a few times to process it fully.
Is this a joke?
No, it's not. Scowling, I rip the note in half and toss it to one side. Really, though, what kind of idiot would write something so ridiculous? As if a dying person would make quips about blood and ink. Besides, who brings writing materials with them in a place like this? Some sort of scholar? They'd make it sound like they were fatally wounded, but I see no blood anywhere. And definitely no bodies. Whatever. I try to dismiss the note from my mind, but no. An unsettling thought weighs me down. Could it be that someone recently came through here? Considering how my path so far has been more or less free of trials, it seems possible. But that raises a new set of questions. Who came before me? Are they still alive? Have they already left? Or are they still here? I thought I was all alone in this place, but this note, it doesn't seem that old. I guess it's possible that it's just an illusion or something. Or perhaps time works differently here. Who knows? I guess there's nothing I can do about it right now, except to keep moving forward. As much as I hate to touch this door again. Gritting my teeth, I reach out for the handle and throw all my weight into shoving the door open. The tingling sensation briefly jolts through my body, but I quickly step away from the door and the feeling subsides. It was incredibly dark inside the stairwell, so even the dim light of this room is a welcome sight. I have to blink a little to readjust. I step idly past the threshold, trying to make out the shapes in the flickering light of torches on the walls. And then my foot hits something. Something that moves. Ugh. A hiss comes from beneath my feet. My whole body goes rigid. Slithering on the floor with its tail right by my boots is a massive snake. Its head is several feet away from me. Whoa. The snake rises up into an intimidating height, staring at me with slitted yellow eyes. Its tongue flickers out like a flash of flame. I shoot a hand down, grasp for my sword. My fingers scrape the pommel. No time to think, I have to. It lunges at me. Shit. I leap to the side just before it strikes. My fingers finally grasp the pommel of my sword, and I drag it out of the sheath. The sound echoes hollowly throughout the room. I grasp the blade with both hands, raising it up and gritting my teeth. The snake's body twists eerily as its head moves closer. I point the tip of the ornamental blade at the beast with one hand, and raise my other hand, murmuring under my breath. Concentrate. A crackling sound splits through the air. Blue sparks shine from the hilt of my sword, curling around the blade. They channel towards the tip, burning brighter and brighter each moment. The snake's eyes are fixed on me. It darts forward, its fangs glisten. The sparks leap and meet the snake in midair. Harsh noise rings out in the echoey halls. The sound of something sharp piercing through the scales and hide. The blue sparks turn into icy daggers, impaling the snake on both sides. The weight of the ice drags it to the floor before it reaches me. I take a step backward as it rises by my feet. The sound of its horrible hissing makes me cringe. Ugh. But soon, the snake goes silent and still. I stand still, ready for it to suddenly start squirming again. The cold magic from my sword leaves a chill in the air, even after the light fades. Tentatively, I prod the serpent with my boot. The life seems to have left its slitted golden eyes. Those fangs. That thing could have probably eaten me in one bite. When I take a closer look at it, I can see its scales are an odd shape of purple, and they gleam almost like gems. And more than that, white patches spread over its hide. I choose to take it as a coincidence, but these patches are becoming a little too strange to just ignore. Exhaling heavily, I sheath my sword, rolling my shoulders to relieve the tension in them. I haven't fought anything in a long time. I trained a lot with Gideon whenever he was home in between adventures. He helped me harness my magic and channel it using a blade rather than a staff. A blade, he said, was much more practical than a staff. You can use it for offense if your magic isn't effective. But training isn't anything like a real fight, something I learned a few months ago when I killed someone for the first time. He'd been trying to rob me in an alley and threatened me with a knife. Without even thinking, I cast a wave of icicles at him and then turned and ran. I didn't see him afterwards, but I don't see how he could have survived the spell. I felt guilty for a few weeks after, but finally I realized the harsh reality. When someone threatens your life, you have to act as fast as you can. I reacted on instinct, and if I hadn't, well, I'd probably be the dead one. But that's all in the past. Getting through the cathedral is all I'm worried about now. Or, more accurately, it's all that I can let myself be worried about. If I'm all alone with my muddy thoughts, I'm afraid my sanity might start slipping away. Don't want that. Clearing my clouded mind with a shake of my head, I turn my attention towards examining the room. It's a wide chamber, lit by candelabras standing near the walls. Behind a statue in the corner, there's a small set of stairs that lead down into some sort of passage. I can't help but sigh in relief. It's not a dead end. I'm clinging to the hope that I don't run into any dead ends because, well, if I do, I'm as good as dead myself. It's the term. I exhale a deep breath, calming my still racing heartbeat. Briefly, I glance back over at the snake just to make sure it hadn't moved again or anything. Its amethyst hide sticks out against the cold gray floor. The glow from the magical icy crystals sticking out of its scales makes them gleam brightly. It's morbidly beautiful in a way. It's also very dead. Well, no point lingering. I really don't want to stick around to see if there's more snakes like that one. I step around the statue and hurry towards the stairs. The hall that I enter is a huge one, with a towering arched ceilings and massive statues looming on the walls. The ethereal light from the wall-mounted torches flickers onto the statues, making them look like they're being consumed by a pale fire. It feels so dark and empty in here that it makes my skin crawl. I can sense a lingering magic in the air, but it's oddly stale, like something that's evaporated and left only a shadow behind. I also can't help but feel that those statues are watching me with their cold, marble eyes. Something about this place just feels so twisted, as if everything here is a mockery of itself. Taking a deep breath, I start to move forward. An occasional cool rush of air brushes against my face as I walk. Could this massive hall lead into a cave or the outside? How else could there possibly be a draft? The unnerving silence reminds me of something I'd been trying to put out of my mind. And the other person who could be here, did they pass through this corridor too? And that might explain why I feel so unnaturally empty. My muddy thoughts only clear when I hear a crunch under my foot. Another piece of parchment, maybe? I squint in the darkness to try and make out the shape. A bone. Attached to it is something large and leathery. A wing? So in my discomfort, I glance around to see if I can glimpse any other parts of whatever this is. Sure enough, there are several dismembered creatures cluttering the dark hallway. Small corpses, only a little over the size of a goblin. They look similar to goblins, and yet they're not exactly the same. They're shaped like sculptured monstrosities, winged, horned, and hooved. They seem to have leathery skin instead of a stone hide, and I could see long gashes that sliced open their sides. Blood spills out gruesomely, pooling on the floor. So it's true. Someone came through this place recently. And whoever, or whatever it was, they clearly killed these things with ease. The blood, it looks fresh. Maybe only a few hours old. That means the one who entered here before me still has to be here, surely. They've already cleared the path that I've been traveling, except for that snake. Maybe it was sleeping when they passed through. I suppose I'm glad whoever it was is alright taking care of these creatures, but I don't like the idea of someone else doing all the dirty work. Sidestepping the monstrous corpses, I carefully start moving forward again, staying alert for any sign of movement. If this explorer is after treasure, like what the monk said, chances are they won't be friendly. I'll fight them if I have to, but I hope they'll listen to what I have to say. But I won't get my hopes up. Whew. I've only been walking for a few minutes when a fresh, stronger gust of air flies into me, ruffling my clothes and hair. Soon I can spot an opening not far ahead. I sped up my pace. Finally, I step out from the hewn stone on the rocky cave floor. It's an abrupt transition, and it feels bizarre. The maw of the cave opens into a rocky, dark, frozen vista, and the way ahead is paved by a rickety wooden bridge. The bridge twists and turns around a corner, dangerously thin, but it's the only way forward. One lone torch stands by the entry to the bridge, attached to a large rock that sticks up from the ground. I move up to the torch and ease it out of its bracket. It's fairly light, and its warmth is a contrast to the cold cave. But since my homeland is in the mountains, I'm so used to the cold that the cave reminds me more of home more than anything. It sort of feels nice. Pale flame flickers from side to side as I sort of quietly make my way down the stone path. It's all very surreal. Just minutes ago, I was in a grand hallway. Now I'm not even sure I'm in a cathedral any longer. Is there some sort of significance to this strange layout? I mean, could it be a result of some kind of magic? Or is it something as simple as a passageway into the mountains? I'd be willing to bet that the monk knows the answer to all these questions, but I doubt he'll feel like answering them. I have a feeling that he enjoys seeing me so confused. I just hope I don't run into any more spirits like him. One was more than enough. As I approach the corner, I can hear a new, faint sound. It's not the soft drip of water from the ceiling and not the wind blowing. It's distinct and hard to make out fully, but it sounds like fighting. I freeze in place, tilting my head to try and make out the noise better. It's definitely fighting. I can hear scuffling and shouting echoing in the distance. They're not right around the corner, but they can't be farther than a minute or two ahead. For a moment, I can't help but wonder if I really should go further. I mean, I know I can't turn back, but I could always wait for the fighting to die down, then try to sneak past. But I want to. No, I have to see who this person I've been following is. I can't let myself hesitate any longer. I break into a full-on sprint, clutching my torch tightly. I'm not worried about stealthiness anymore. My boots practically glide along the icy stone, faster and faster. Somehow I manage to keep my balance, letting my weight carry me forward. My scabbard clinks at my hip with each step, but before long, it's drowned out by the noises that are growing closer. I can hear my own heavy breaths and the dull thud of my footfalls. My nerves are tingling, burning. My lungs feel like they're full of fire and ice, mainly ice. Every time I take another step, I don't know if I'll be able to take the next. But I do, and the next step comes faster still. Yet every time I round the corner, there's no sign of life. Just more of the bridge coiling on and out of sight. I race around another corner. They're so close now, so close. I slow to jog to catch my breath, heaving in a gasps of air. My stomach burns, my legs ache, but all that doesn't matter. And somehow my torch hasn't burned out. In fact, it seems to be burning even brighter still. Once I recover my composure, I draw out my sword, keeping the torch in my other hand. I step out from behind the corner, and the first thing I see. A tall man with 2 rapiers lashes out. A group of huge, savage hounds, almost the size of bears. Bear hounds. Drool leaks from their jowls, fangs glistening in the light of my torch. The man plunges his blades into one of the hounds, tossing its body aside. 2 more charge at him, but he easily dodges, swiping at their necks. They fall to the side, leaving only 1 hound left. When the final beast charges at him, his blade drives through its skull. A moment later, he shoves it to the ground and pulls his sword out of its head with a disgusted grunt. It goes silent soon after, like the rest of the canine corpses scattered around the small clearing. There had to be at least 6 dead hounds, each lying in a pool of splattered blood and gore. Struck speechless from his beautiful fighting, I take a step back. But the man turns to look at me and I reflexively tense. His pale complexion gleams with sweat and his clothes are splattered with blood, all of it fresh. He has a head of long blonde hair, and a band of cloth over his forehead keeps it out of his eyes. His eyebrows, dark in comparison to his hair, furrow deeply as he stares at me with 2 piercing gray eyes. I can already tell he's someone who lives south of my homeland. His fine outfit, his regal posture, he's certainly a noble of some sort. We stare at each other for a few moments. I can't think of what to say. But then...
How in the sky's name did you get past Bella?
I did not expect that voice for that man. His voice isn't exactly deep, but it's sort of resonant, like a bard's. He also has a posh accent that confirms my suspicions about his heritage.
Bella?
I recover my wits quickly, trying to think of what the man could possibly be referring to. The snake, probably.
I didn't encounter anyone on the way here, sir. Just...
The snake, you fool.
He interrupts me in an impatient cry.
How did you get past her? Oh, I swear to the heavens, if you killed her...
I cringe. That snake belonged to someone. It was either him or me.
She attacked me, sir. I didn't know what to...
Oh man, I was kind of hoping he would have said that. He curses to the air and gives a savage kick to the ground beside him, knocking up a flurry of dust and pebbles.
Fate! Such a savage mistress you are to me.
He moans towards the cave ceiling and wipes a splotch of blood off his cheek with his wrist. I'm sorry, so really, very sorry. A tense moment of silence passes. I'm just fooling around. I actually just crept past that thing while I was sleeping. I feel sorry for it, you know. I didn't want to disturb its repose. Clearly this man is crazy. His expression quickly goes serious again, and he affixes me with a suspicious glare.
Why are you here? Go back the way you came.
Oh no, I'm not going anywhere. Is he serious? I clutch my sword tight enough for my knuckles to turn white.
I've traveled for a year to get here. I am not going back.
You know what's funny? I actually auditioned for the voice of this guy. The nearest village. The only place I can get food and water. Several weeks worth of travel. On horseback, of all things. And my horse bolted the moment I crossed the threshold of this damn place. Gritting my teeth, I train a glare on the man, ready to spring into action at the slightest movement.
If you don't plan on letting me past, then I'll have to fight you to get through.
The man stares at me, his eyes going wide with surprise. Shit, I might have sounded a little harsh. It's been a while since I've talked to another human, you know. Not really, he had the arrogance to tell me to go back where I came from. No. After a moment, though, his mouth slowly curls in a light smirk. Really, food and water are your only concerns? He sheaths his blade and his 2 scabbards strapped on his back. I guess he doesn't deem me a threat any longer. Pierce placing his hands on his hips, he tilts his head at me, raising an eyebrow.
How long have you been down here?
All my life. Should be an easy question to answer, but I find myself struggling. How long has it been exactly? A couple hours, maybe? Maybe longer still, or not even that long. The man seems to expect my hesitation because he gives a firm nod. You don't know, do you? No.
Well, that's because time works strangely in this place. If it works at all.
I knew it. I've been here what feels like weeks, but I don't need to eat and I have no need for drink. Well, that's not entirely true. I could use a strong shot of brandy. He clears his throat awkwardly after noticing my blank stare. Anyway, my point is, this place distorts time in some strange fashion. You don't have to worry about normal things like food and water. Lucky, too, because I'd have worked up quite an appetite killing all these nasty beasts. He clasps his hands behind his head, wearing a smug look. Then he takes a few steps forward, leisurely strolling towards me. When he stands a few feet away, I can see that he's quite a bit taller than I am. But despite his height and leany, muscled build, I don't really feel much threatened. Because as deadly as this man apparently is, he just seems so colorful.
So, my angry little friend, starvation is the least of your worries.
Instead, you should be thinking about what to do if one of those buggers decides he wants you for a meal. He nods his head in the direction of the nearest dead hound.
There are more creatures like these in the cathedral?
I question him warily, briefly glancing at the beast he motioned to. It's a really massive creature. You haven't... At first he seemed puzzled, then his sharp features take on a bitter look.
Well, you see, while all you had to do was waltz down the corridors, skipping as you went.
I killed a snake, thank you.
I had to murder things.
I had to kill a snake, thank you. He gazes accusingly down at me, his voice rising as he continues, and also raising.
Gargoyles, demons, angry spirits, creatures I have no idea how to describe.
You didn't come across a monk, have you?
And now, bloody dogs.
No, they are quite bloody, aren't they? You did a good job on them.
Let me repeat that for you.
Oh, I got it. I can hear.
I was just swarmed by dogs.
Yes. And?
Meanwhile, you stood by and watched the show like a nobleman at a cockfight. Wasn't that generous of you?
Oh, excuse me, Mr. You. I don't know your name yet. How dare you? You've been pacing back and forth in a small line while he speaks, gesturing theatrically with one hand in the air. Then he stops in front of me suddenly, wearing a potent glare.
Well, don't you have something to say for yourself?
Apologize. We're not apologizing. It's not my fault. He got here before me. What am I supposed to do? Why should I apologize to this guy? I think he's being far too dramatic for the circumstances we're in.
I'm appreciative and all, but it's not exactly my fault I arrived when I did. You know, it could have easily been the other way around if I'd arrived first and you came after.
But it wasn't the other way around. He interrupts me again, clicking his tongue disapprovingly. Possibilities in the past are not the present. I watch him skeptically while he scolds me, but soon he goes quiet and lets out a defeated sigh.
Well, if you insist on being a nuisance rather than going back and getting out of my hair, then quick babbling and move forward.
I'm trying to, you're in my way. We're wasting time here after all.
But you said time doesn't work the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say, time has no meaning down here. Move! He takes a long step towards me and places his hands on my shoulders, giving me a rough push forward. I stumble through the sea of hound corpses, doing my best not to slip in any patches of slimy blood. Will I be able to last longer than a few hours with this man before the last traces of my sanity leave me? I doubt it. I pause, turning around to stop the strange man before he can go any further.
At least tell me your name.
What is your name, good sir? He stops in order to give me a dry look.
Maybe you should have introduced yourself earlier then, rather than gulping like a savage.
Can't you read the nameplate, you moron? I'm Kymil. He brushed past me after his retort, continuing down the path as he speaks. I follow after him reluctantly, feeling more than a little put off. Matches his odd demeanor perfectly, really.
I am Damien. Sir Damien.
Oh, I was going to call you ma'am, but sir works, I guess.
Well, sort of.
Oh, are you a ma'am? I'm sorry. Sort of. You see, I served as a knight ever since I came of age. But apparently on one occasion I did something disgraceful towards the court. There was some sort of fuss about relieving me of my title. A bunch of nonsense, if you ask me. Somehow I'm not surprised at all to hear this.
I see. Well, I'm Kymil. Just Kymil.
You can call me Kai, if you want. No, don't do that. I interject my own name when I have the chance after he pauses for a breath. I have to jog a little to keep up with his long strides forward, which don't slow even as the path starts to narrow. The cave ceiling ahead slopes steeply down, and soon it's only a few feet above our heads, forming a narrow tunnel. For a few moments I follow Damien along quietly. From his rapid strides, it's almost like he's trying to lose me in the darkness of the tunnel. But it's not long before his airy voice echoes out again, and he throws a glance over his shoulder at me.
Kymil, eh? Not a bad name. Why do you pronounce it like that? Kymil.
Kymil. He repeats my name under his breath, snorting lightly. Sounds like the name of a mountain dweller. Are you from the Royals, boy?
I lived close to the Royal Mountains, yes. You've been there?
When I catch up to him, I give him a sidelong glance as I hurry to match his pace.
A few times. It was something of a pilgrimage with a privilege back in my city.
You'd always see a bunch of nobles puffed up within their finest furs to travel north. Honestly, cold climates aren't my personal taste, but I suppose you must like them a great deal. He speaks so casually that it's as if we're on a pleasant stroll through the castle gardens, not in the dark depths of this strange cave. I'm not sure if I find his mannerisms comforting or disturbing.
I do like them, yes, but I've seen many different lands in my travels south. The dark plains I had to ride in for the last week or so have been unpleasant.
I shiver lightly, just thinking about the black, desolate ground that I was struck in for days after days. Fills me with dread. Damon nods in grim agreement with my words.
Ah, yes. It must not have been a pleasant ride alone.
You weren't alone. His lips curled into a smug grin. No, luckily I had an entourage of young, aspiring adventurers like yourself following me home. I told them I was helping them gain traveling experience, but in reality I think I'd just go mad if there was no one to talk to. I'm fairly sure I'd go mad if I had to talk to this man for an extended period of time, like longer than 5 minutes.
In fact, I'm almost glad you came here. I was seriously contemplating trying to train one of those hounds, so that I'd have someone to chat with.
I'm flattered, really. Although I definitely don't like this man, I have to agree with him. It's been a while since I've heard another voice, and I hadn't realized I missed it. No, at this rate, I'd probably wind up wishing I had the silence back. Deciding to change the subject, I speak up again.
Why did you come to the cathedral?
Most likely for the same reasons you did.
Oh, I doubt that very much. He replies I'm missing a beat.
And what reasons were those?
You tell me. They're your reasons.
What do you mean they're my reasons?
You're not answering my question.
Come now. Are we really going to argue semantics?
I can't tell if he's messing with me or he's actually this stupid. But then he flashes me a broad grin, wearing an expression much like a satisfied cat.
I came here rather by happenstance.
It's something of a long story, dreadfully long and boring. You wouldn't want to hear it. If I were to give you all of it, then I tense. A long story by this man's definition would kill me before the cathedral ever could. Damien continues in a cheerful tone as we walk along, ducking under a rock that extends down from the ceiling.
The short of it? Well, you see, I was just traveling through the realms as I often do.
In a small town I was passing through, I found a party of young Oh, I already told you about them, didn't I? I'm so sorry. My memory loses me in my old age. He lets out an awkward laugh. This guy is really something.
You're not answering my question.
Okay, that's strange. That was a glitch there. Well, I'll have to let them know about that. He lifts a hand to scratch at the back of his head.
They were young and a little naive, you know.
They told me about the cathedral, you see, and I offered to keep them safe during their journey here. And when we got to the gates, I told them I'd scout ahead and come back if I didn't get murdered by anything.
I may also have said they ought to leave if I didn't return within an hour. So there is that.
He sheepishly clears his throat.
So, what you're saying is, you basically stole the idea of going to the cathedral from these people you were traveling with, then tricked them into letting you claim the spoils?
Damien gives me a highly offended look.
Well, if you want to frame me in such a malicious light, you go ahead and say it like that.
Personally, I think they all would have been slaughtered horribly by now. Not much you can do to save people over their heads.
Maybe it would have been better that way.
They're just gonna run off to another dungeon and get slaughtered there, more than likely. He lets out a delighted chuckle. Ha ha! How realist. I like that. We're going to get along famously. As we speak, he leads me into the dark stone tunnels that the formerly huge cave eventually narrows into. The smell is terrible. My eyes start to water. The light of my torch wavers, but it keeps burning as we wind left to right and left again, heading deeper into the darkness.
Do you have any idea where you're going?
I question him skeptically. He seems to be blindly moving forward. None at all. Glad to hear.
Well, you see, in my time at the cathedral, I've noticed two things about this place.
We reach an intersection of tunnels, and Damon beckons for me to hand him my torch. I reluctantly comply, offering up to him. He takes the torch and uses its light to peer into the left tunnel, then the right. After some deliberation, he sets off down the left tunnel, still carrying my torch. I guess I won't be getting that back anytime soon. The jerk. Taking my torch. Damien casts a side glance at me, pursing his lips together.
The first thing is that the architecture makes little to no sense.
You've noticed it too. The strange abrupt transition from a massive hall into an icy cave? It'd be impossible, or at least improbable, in a normal place. Damien nods with a sour expression, his chest rising and falling with a light sigh.
Whether these walls and tunnels were made by men or not is anyone's guess.
Perhaps they're born of a magic known only to old wizards with their noses buried in ancient dusty tomes. He pauses, his brow furrowing as he glances around, and looks like we've hit a dead end. Now wait. From the faint glow of the torch, I can see what looks like small footholds in the rock wall, allowing someone to climb up the tunnel like a ladder. They're small, curved metal bars, so surely they must have been inserted here by someone.
Now the second observation is one that may surprise you a little more. Considering you've been riding on my coattails all the way through this place.
Excuse me? He's really not gonna let that one slide, is he? Arrgh. I watch as Damien starts to climb up the wall, holding the torch carefully in one hand while grasping the metal bars with his other. His boots make a soft dinging sound every time they hit the metal.
And what makes this observation so surprising?
I start to follow behind him, climbing the makeshift ladder more easily than he can since I have both of my hands free. I can see that the tunnel leads up to somewhere with a brighter source of light. When I try to look up past Damien, I can spot what looks curiously like an arched ceiling, though. A sewer gate? A grate? Through a sewer grate.
Damien?
Damien, talk to me. He's gone quiet, which is definitely a bad sign. But I hear grunting from above me, along with the clinking of metal. Looks like he's fiddling with something. Blast! The damn torch just came hurtling past my face. It lands far below us on the ground with a distant thud. Give me a warning next time before you're just gonna throw fire at me. I crab irritably towards Damien, but I hear no reply. Instead, there's just the sound of metal clanking again, this time louder. It's so bright. The soft bluish light streams down towards me. I look up to see Damien lifting the grate, pulling himself up through it and onto the ground a moment later, crawling out of sight. I hastily climb up the last few ladder rungs to follow suit, hoisting myself up through the grate without too much effort. The floor I pull myself onto is cold and smooth, marked only by the small sewer grate we came out of. Damien sits on the marble tile beside me, staring ahead distractedly.
The second observation I've made
This place sucks?
is that half of the things you see here are nothing but damnable illusions.
Illusions? Illusions? What do you mean illusions? That doesn't seem... A chill of understanding runs down my spine as I follow Damon's gaze. Through a nearby window, I can see the pale moon through the trees. Trees? Doesn't that mean we're on the surface? Or is this another illusion? As I gaze through the window in awe, Damon snorts and pushes himself up to his feet.
We have to be a great distance below the surface still, after all those stairs leading downwards.
He declares this contemptfully as he brushes himself off.
And you saw for yourself how there wasn't a tree in sight near the cathedral. You'd have to travel a week before you glimpsed any sort of foliage.
He points to the window. Looks like there might have once been stained glass, but now it's too faded and cracked for the art to be recognizable. This place is trying to drive us mad. Don't believe any of it for a second. Seems pretty real to me, but what Damien says makes sense. There's no way the forest out there can actually exist. The dead plain stretched on for endless leagues around the cathedral. But that makes me wonder, what other things have I seen that might just been illusions? I push myself slowly up to my feet, tilting my head upwards to gaze at the beautifully arched ceiling. What about this corridor? I nod to the hall in front of us. For the first time in a while, it looks like we're back in some sort of cathedral-esque structure. The moonlight streams in through the windows, but the idea that it's not real makes an unpleasant tingle course through me. Damon seems to hesitate at my words as if he's unsure of how to reply. I believe the rooms themselves are real, but I wouldn't trust them, nor anything I saw in them. He strides over to one of the windows, rapping his knuckles on the pane with a frown.
Gods only know how many illusions I've had leap at my face. How many doors I've had to pass through, only to have them vanish before my eyes, or lead right back to where I was 20 paces prior.
Hefting my pack, I start to walk down the corridor, my footsteps echoing back to me. I hear Damien follow closely behind, muttering quietly to himself. In the distance, I can make out a rectangular shape tucked into a corner. When we draw close, I can quickly see that it's an altar, a thin slab of marble that looks very familiar. Damon soon passes me with his long strides, stepping up onto the dais. He props one hand on his hip and strokes his smooth chin with the other, frowning thoughtfully down at the altar. Awfully decorative, isn't it? Unlike that one back at the entrance of this blasted place. Now that he mentions it, I do notice some differences. There are dried flowers scattered around the altar's base, as well as various beads and dull dust-covered urns. I also notice a lot of coins scattered around, gleaming tantalizingly in the light. And then in the centers of the altar, there's a small pale crystal that protrudes from the dark marble. It's faintly tinged with crimson, but otherwise translucent. Seems a bit oddly out of place. I wonder if this altar is as sinister in nature as the previous one. The magic seems a little different, though. It's more potent somehow. Curiously, I gaze up to Damien.
At the first altar, did you have to spill blood to get past it?
Damien, who is eyeing the small crystal suspiciously, turns to me and lets out a snort.
Of course. I had to blemish my perfect complexion with a cut in order to sate the damn thing.
He gives a disapproving shake of his head. We both stare at the altar for a few long moments in curious silence. I finally speak up, quietly.
Do you think there's some kind of meaning behind them? The altars, that is.
There's a strong magic that comes from them, and there has to be some powerful force that created it. his lips twisting in an expression of thought. Damon gives a slow shake of his head.
I'm not really sure. They're quite odd, obviously, and I'd wager they've stood here for many years.
He muses as he rubs a hand along the side of his neck, exhaling a sigh. I know piss all about magic, but I think it's wise to be careful around these things. Magic in general makes me a tad uneasy, and this sort seems especially fishy. I nod in understanding. Every mage is actually attuned to magic. Actually acutely attuned to magic, and actually attuned to magic, but this magic in particular is overwhelming, like a potent bitterness. Damien raises his head and glances around us briefly, wearing a dissatisfied expression.
What troubles me more, honestly, is the lack of doors leading out of this room.
I scan the place skeptically at his words, but it's true. No doors.
There has to be some way out of here.
A secret passage or something, surely. Damon gives me a dubious look. I'm not going back into those tunnels, if that's what you're planning on suggesting. The memory of the horrible smell combined with the discouraging thought of having to backtrack makes me more than a little unhappy.
I don't know about you, but it seems like a better idea to explore down there than rot as corpses up here.
A dry smirk then rises to his lips as he rolls his eyes at me.
What's the matter? Worried the damp floor might stain your boots?
Okay, Mr. Perfect Complexion. I might not survive another journey on the ladder if you nearly burned me to a crisp with that torch. At that, Damon gives a quiet cough and rubs at the back of his head with a hand. I heave a sigh and slide slowly to the ground with my back against the altar. Leaning heavily back against it, I pull my knees up to my chest. All my exhaustion from traveling is finally catching up to me, now that my initial excitement at finding the cathedral is worn off. I feel incredibly tired. Like I missed a week's worth of sleep. Damien lingers in place for a long moment before finally lowering himself to sit beside me. My eyes drift closed, and I let myself linger deep in my thoughts. Lots of things, really. My mother, my home, all of the people and places I've left behind. Slowly, a familiar doubt creeps into my heart. Is this all really worth it? And I think I'm going to leave the video off here with that, guys. If you want to check it out, you can purchase it on the link below. It's $10. There is a PG-13 rated one, and there is an 18 plus version for those of you who want the naughty scenes. So yeah, check out Requiescence by Argent Games. That was the developer. So yeah, take it easy, everybody, and I will see you next time.